Environments play a major role in setting.
I'm just going to show you a couple of quick things that I like to set up before I get started working. So before you can change any settings, you're going to need to actually have a canvas to work on. So I'm just going to click this little plus in the top right corner of the screen. And so you'll see I have probably a lot more options here than you do because I've made a lot of custom ones. For this particular thing, when I'm doing thumbnails, I'm just going to click the screen size option at the top. But when we go to create a project, I'll have a better idea of what size of canvas I want or what shape. So we'll come back and probably create a custom one there. But for now, I'm just going to tap this very top option that says screen size, and it will take me right into the canvas. So after you've created a canvas, it will just take you right into here. And you can see there's this top bar along the top of the screen with all of the tools that you're going to want to use. And to get into settings and just set things up how I like them, you're going to click on this little wrench icon towards the top left. And then so I like having this light interface turned on, and then personally I like to have the brush cursor, which just means as you draw, you're going to see this shape of the brush as you go. If you have that off, you can see you don't see that shape, you just see the mark that you're making. I like it on, you can turn it off if you want to. So when you just tap on the screen and hold your finger, then you'll get this menu that shows up, and you can customize this to whatever you want. This is what I have it set up as. I think by default it's probably something a little different, but basically how you use that is you tap and hold and then slide up to the option you want to use. But if you want to change what those things are, you tap and hold and then lift your finger and then tap and hold again on the option you want to change, and you can see there's a whole lot of different options for what you can do there. There's different actions, or you can choose a specific brush that you want it to switch to. Yeah, so this can be super helpful. It can help you do a lot of things a lot more quickly. And then over here on the top right are probably your most important tools. You've got your brush menu. You can choose what you're drawing with. So I'm going to go in and choose, I like to use a slightly bigger pencil for sketching. I have all of my brushes, like the ones that I like, in a little favorites menu here. You're going to find the default pencils in this sketching section. And the HB pencil is what I'm going to be using. And then you have your smudge menu and your eraser menu, and all of these have the same brushes. So you can smudge with the same brush, you can erase with the same brush if you want to. Yeah, I'll show you, as I use those, I think you'll get the feel for it a little bit better. And then there's this layers menu, basically just lets you draw things on top of other things without ruining what you've already drawn. So, and you click the little plus to create a new layer. We'll get into that more, definitely. But for now, I just want to tap on this layer, rename it, and say, this is thumbnails, and press enter. And so now I have a thumbnails layer that I'm going to be sketching on. And then just the last thing is I'm on this weird peach color. So I want to just sketch in black probably. And you can just drag down to the bottom to get a black, and then tap again to dismiss your colors. And I think that's pretty much the basics up there. I guess the other thing I should point out really quickly is that over here you have your brush size slider is the top one. So you can change how big the brush is. This is, this is how big it starts. And then if you put it down, you can make it a lot smaller. And then brush opacity is the other slider down below here. So it's a little hard to tell. I'm just not I'm pushing hard and it's just less opaque. But don't worry about the square for now. I'm sure I'll use it later. And then you have little buttons for undo and redo down here. I don't ever use those because you can just tap with 2 fingers to undo and tap with 3 fingers to redo, and it's much, much, much faster. I like to get started by just sort of drawing some boxes. So for this one, I'm going to start with maybe one portrait, just rectangle that's kind of the same shape as an iPad screen, maybe one square. And this can sort of help to find some different compositions. The whole point here is just to get an idea of sort of where am I going with this illustration, right? So now I'm just going to look at these, and I think I really like the second one best. So I'm going to show you how I would take that second sketch and just put it on another canvas to get started on working out the details a little bit better for a full sketch. To do that, I'm going to select that, or get that selection tool again. And notice I made this one a square, so I'm going to want a square canvas, and then I'm just going to select this entire thing, just draw around the outside of it, tap again to finish that selection, and then I want to make sure I am on the right layer that has the actual image on it, and it looks like I am on that thumbnails layer. So I'm just going to swipe down really quickly with 3 fingers, and then I'm going to tap copy, and then I'm just going to tap gallery, and then I'm back out to my gallery view. I click plus, and this is where I'm going to show you how to make a custom canvas size. So down at the very bottom of this menu, there's a button that says create custom size, and I'm going to tap this. And for something like this, maybe I'll do like 4,000 by 4,000. That's a pretty big size. That should be okay if I decide I want to print or something like that. And then I'm just going to name this custom square or something like that. Click done, and it will create a canvas for you. And if you were to go back out to the gallery, it also saves that as a new canvas size. So you can see down at the bottom, I have custom square, and I can use that again. But for now, I just want to go back into this canvas I just made. And then again, I'm going to swipe down with 3 fingers and then just tap paste. We have our thumbnail all blown up and everything. So I'm going to tap on the layers menu. I'm going to rename this to thumbnail and then press enter. And then I'm going to create another layer above that, and I'm just going to rename it to sketch. And then I like to just lower the opacity of the thumbnail layer quite a bit. So I'm going to tap on that to make sure that's my selected layer, and then tap with 2 fingers, just a really quick tap, and you see this slide to adjust in blue bar appear at the top of the screen. And then you can just slide anywhere on the screen to change the opacity. So towards the left, we'll make it lower, towards the right, we'll make it higher. And then I'm going to bring the layer opacity down to something like 25% maybe. And then you just tap anywhere to kind of finish that opacity change. So I'm doing a pretty rough version of this sketch to start with, I guess. And I'm just sort of coming in and kind of formalizing some of the lines I did earlier. And then I'll turn off the thumbnail quite a bit to just sort of see how the sketch is working on its own. And sometimes I'll even work just for a second that way, so I don't have the distracting thumbnail underneath. It kind of gives me a clearer view of what I'm doing. And I'll probably toggle this back and forth several times as I'm working. This is in a pretty good place. I'm happy for now with where the sketch is. That doesn't mean it's 100% perfect. I'll probably still make a few other minor changes as I go through and do the shapes and the colors, but for now I think I've done pretty much all I can on the actual sketch itself, and I think we're good to go from here. To start, remember if you open your layers, I have 2 layers now. I have my thumbnail and my sketch. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the thumbnail layer since I'm done copying everything I want from there. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I tap with 2 fingers and just bring the opacity of the sketch layer down to about 25%. And then I'm going to create a new layer, and again I just tap and hold on it and then pull it down underneath that one. And in this case, it actually is a little bit important that you keep the sketch as the top layer, because otherwise you'll start blocking out pieces of your sketch as you create shapes. At this stage, I like to just sort of plan what layers I'll need, and obviously I'll add more as I need them. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to show you how I would start drawing the body. The way that I do this, and the reason that it's so important to have a detailed sketch to begin with, is that basically I'm doing this drawing again, but just tracing over everything with the selection tool. And again, the selection tool is this little S at the top left. You're going to become very familiar with it because starting here, I use it a lot. So, and for the body layer, I think is what I had selected. And actually I put these in the wrong order. So I want that body layer above the back arm and leg because this includes the front leg, the front arm, and the head, I think. So I'm going to just grab my selection tool and then start tracing over the outline. This doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. I'll probably come in and end up cleaning up a couple of these edges anyway. But I do want to make it as close as I can at this stage because this is part of the final drawing. But I just need to go in and finish up the head. And sometimes I'll just sort of build it up in pieces like this. So there's a couple ways you can fill in this shape. And again, I'm going to turn off the sketch for just a second so we can see what's going on here. There's a couple ways to fill in the color on this. One of them that I'm going to show you is called color drop. Just tap and drag out of that color and you'll see the color kind of comes with you. And then you just drop it where you want. And if you tap and hold without letting go in the area that you want to fill, you can actually adjust the fill threshold. You can just let go and it will fill in that area. You can dismiss your selection and that's all filled with color. And then I'm going to turn on something called alpha lock on this layer, which means that as I draw, I won't be able to draw outside of any area that's already been drawn in. That may not make a lot of sense, but I think as I show it to you, you'll see what I'm saying. So I'm going to swipe to the right with 2 fingers on that layer, and you'll see a little checkerboard pattern appear in the background of the layer thumbnail. You can also tap on the layer and tap alpha lock in this menu that comes up, or I think I have it set up as one of my quick menu shortcuts. But whichever way you prefer to do that, I really like this swipe with 2 fingers method. Basically, you can go in, choose another color so we can see what's going on here. And then I'm going to choose a brush that's just bigger that I can fill in with, and I'll talk more about these in a second. But as I draw, you'll notice that it doesn't go outside of the layer that I already had there. Or if I turn alpha lock off and do that same thing, it's drawing outside the bounds as well. So this is really nice for adjusting colors, for adding texture, things like that. But basically, I'm just going to do this for each section here that I've outlined. I haven't worried too much about colors because I know I'm going to go and change those quite a bit as I start adding the background. But for now, I'm really happy with these shapes, and we can use those to sort of start building the color and the texture and start thinking more about the details. So to start on colors, you'll notice that I've been working from a little palette I already had here. We're going to create a new one because these are just colors I had laying around. I just want to get something a little more specific for this drawing. And just make more conscious color decisions rather than just picking something I already have. So to do that, I'm going to tap on this palettes button at the bottom right corner of the color panel. And then up at the very top of this, I'm going to click the little plus icon, and you'll notice that created a untitled palette partway down my panel here. And so that already has default marked. You can choose which one you want as default by tapping select or set default. And then I'm going to go back to my disk, and you'll notice I have a completely blank color palette now. And then I'm just going to call that Space Cadet. And then to start picking colors, a lot of the time I kind of have sort of a general color palette in mind already. So for this one, I'm going to try to have sort of a teal-ish background and maybe like make some of these background shapes kind of a pink color or something. So I'm going to start adding a couple of those colors. To start with, I'm going to go, because I know I want a kind of teal background, I'm just going to drop that in there right now. So the way I did that is you tap on your layers and then just tap on background color. This is kind of a special layer that you can't do anything with except choose the color. So when you tap on it, it will automatically just drop you in this colors palette and you can choose what color you want your background to be. So I want kind of this teal color. I'm going to turn off the sketch for just a second so I can see what's going on better with my colors. And I'm trying to decide if I want the dark or the light. I think I like the dark just a little bit better. So if you open your brushes and then go down to artistic, both of the brushes that I use most are in here. I actually have slightly modified versions of these that base the opacity a little bit on the speed of the brush as well. Basically, as I go, I want to, because the things that are sort of driving the texture are speed and amount of pressure, I want to kind of vary those as I draw, and as I do that, I can get more interesting. So I'll push a little harder and get kind of a stamped look, and then I want kind of some streakies in there, so I go fast and lighter or fast and darker, just sort of like fill in. For what I'm doing here, because I want to change the entire color of the pant leg, I'm not really going to do too much of that, but later when we start adding a little bit more texture and stuff, that's going to be more important. So let's say I have kind of a yellow on these pants, and I just make it completely yellow, which is not what I actually want to do. But then I go back in and do this brown over the top of that. You kind of get a little bit of the yellow showing through if I use one of these brushes, which I do like. It just gives it a little more life than just a flat color. And so I don't want to completely fill it 100% because I still want sort of that variation in there. So then I don't really like this green jacket. I think that was, I don't know, that's not the color I would go for here. I'm going to just pull open, if I tap on this magic wand, and that opens my adjustments panel. And then there's a couple of ways I can do this. For this one, because it's easier to understand, I'm going to start out by using the hue, saturation, brightness adjustment. And so you'll tap on that and it will pull up these controls down at the bottom of the screen. And because I just want it to be a little closer to blue, I'm just going to slide that hue slider just a tiny bit to the right. And I think I like that quite a bit better already. And if you want to just quickly compare what you had before with what you've switched it to, there's a little preview button at the bottom left. There's a few buttons. It's the second one down. If you hold that, it will switch back to what it looked like before. And then if you let go, it will be with those adjustments applied. So I'm pretty happy with that. I might just tweak a couple other things just to see if I like it any better. But let's say for this helmet, for instance, unhappy with probably the shade of red and just how bright it is. So I could use hue, saturation, and brightness, but I typically use curves for this sort of thing because you get a lot more control, but it is more complicated. You have your composite, red, green, and blue, and composite is going to adjust, I think, all of those together kind of. So basically that's affecting brightness more than anything. So I'm going to pull that up just a little bit, and then I can add more red. And basically the right side of this little chart is going to be your lighter colors, and the left side is your darker colors. And because this is pretty light mostly, you can see this little red peak. That's where the color is, because I only have one color in that helmet. So I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. And I might want to just tone down how red it is by adding a little bit of blue to it. So now that we have our colors kind of figured out and a general direction on those, I'm going to start adding some background details, especially because that will affect some of the contrast in places. I want to get those in pretty early on. Okay, so I'm going to turn my sketch layer back on, and then I'm going to just collapse this whole guy layer group that I made and go to my background group. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move that sketch layer out of that for now, and then turn off that guy group so I can still see my sketch layer and turn it on and off easily. And then for this background section, I'm going to just start adding some of these different background shapes and trying to figure out where I want to go with those color-wise. So let's start with this big circle. Again, I'm just sort of tracing around it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I actually prefer a little bit that it's not perfect. Okay, so I've got that shape pretty much in there. I'm going to turn off the sketch layer. I'm not totally sure what color I want to make this, so I'm going to play with a couple of different things and just see what looks good. So the other one I liked was screen, and maybe if I turn that down a bit, maybe to 40% or something. I think I like that a little bit better. So I might just go with that for now. That means I'm going to have to add another layer to create some of these different background pieces. And again, I'm going to put those in a group just to keep things clean. And we'll just call this whole group background. And then I'll rename this layer to large circle or something like that. I'm going to create another layer for shadows. These are going to be just the shadows along the ground. And these can be a little more just free-handed looking, I guess. They don't have to be perfect, but I'm going to just sort of freehand the ends and sort of use this straight line mode for the select tool for the in-betweens, I guess. Okay, I think that's pretty much where I want it to be for doing the background and a few more color tweaks. The other thing I wanted to show you was if you just feel like some of the things are a little too flat, like you don't want super flat color in places, something that I sometimes do is I'll go and add a layer over the whole thing. And you want to fill this with 50% gray. So you want this 50% gray. I have this blank layer and I'm just going to drag that out and fill the whole layer. And then from there, I'm going to go switch the blend mode to overlay, and that's in the contrast section of the blend modes. And so if I turn that on and off, you should see no difference. It looks like that is working as expected. Okay, so I'm going to open up my adjustments menu, which is the magic wand up at the top left, and I'm going to go down to noise. And you can just slide across all the way to the right, and if you wanted to, you could add this crazy amount of noise. I don't think that's the right look for this particular picture, so I'm going to make this a lot more subtle, and just by swiping anywhere on the screen towards the left, you can pull this down quite a bit. I think something like there is pretty good for what I want, because I just want like a little bit of subtle grain added to this. And let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to do here. I'm going to turn my sketch back on. And I think this is actually one of the hardest parts of a drawing for me, is just deciding when it's done, because I think there's always things I would like to change. But I think this is good enough, so I'm going to call it done. To export this, there's a couple of different ways you can do it, as with a lot of things in here. But the way that I usually use is by tapping on the wrench icon to open the Actions menu, and then tap on Share. And then you can choose what format you want to export it in, whether you want to do Procreate to share it with somebody else with the app, or you can do a Photoshop document if you want to go do something with it in Photoshop, PDF, JPEG, PNG. I tend to do JPEG or PNG or Procreate if I'm backing it up or something. So I'm going to just choose PNG here. You'll get a little circle that says exporting, and then you can export it to whatever you want. So I'm just going to save it to my camera roll, and then it will show up right there. Another way you can do this is if you tap on Gallery and go back to the gallery, you can swipe from the right and just tap Share and get those same options. So that's also an option. But one of the really cool things about Procreate is that now that you've spent all of this time drawing this, you can actually watch a time-lapse replay of the whole thing. It automatically just stores everything that you drew. And if you tap time-lapse replay, then you get a cool little thing that just shows you a quick recreation of the whole drawing. So you can watch this actually while you're in this time-lapse replay mode. You can sort of scrub back and forth if you want to go faster, slower, go back. It's kind of cool. Or you can, within that same menu, just say export time-lapse video. And that will take just a second. And then same thing, you can just save it to wherever you want. So I'm going to save that one to Files, and it will just let me save it in my Files app. So I'll just save it right there. And there you go. I'm really glad that you came and participated, and thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bardot, and I help people find their creativity through drawing on the iPad. You may know me from my YouTube channel, where I teach people about drawing, illustration, and all things Procreate. I've helped millions of people all over the world learn new art-making skills and discover their inner artist. I'm going to give you a tour of the Procreate interface so you can get familiar with it and you'll be ready to follow along with the drawings without being confused about where the different things are. I'll show you the gallery view. I'll show you where the different tools are, how to choose brushes, how to adjust brush size and opacity, and what some of the different menus are. It's just a really quick crash course in Procreate, but I think it's really going to help you as you work on your drawings. This is the Procreate interface. Over here on the right-hand side, we have all of our painting tools. And I always like to start by introducing this little circle in the upper right. And this is how you select colors in Procreate. So you tap this little circle, and as long as you have disc selected here at the bottom, which is what I recommend using to choose colors in Procreate, you'll see a colorful ring with a kind of a disc or circle in the middle. And this is how you choose your colors in Procreate. You choose a hue. So, like red, yellow, green, and then you choose, however light, dark, or saturated you want that color to be. But let's just move the circle down here to black just to get started so we don't have to worry about colors from the get-go. You can tap that circle again to close the color picker. Next up, we're going to go through these tools right here. So starting with this paintbrush, this is of course the brushes. So you can tap on this brush icon and you can scroll through your library of brushes. Procreate comes with a lot of brushes built into it, and each one is organized into a set. So you can kind of tap through these different brushes and just put some brush strokes on your canvas and just kind of see what they look like, see what they do, get a feel for what it feels like to, actually put something down onto your canvas. Oftentimes when you're drawing, like sometimes that's the hardest part, is just getting started and putting something down on the canvas. So I often find that just playing with the brushes and seeing what they do is a good way to just kind of get the ball rolling. So just spend a little bit of time just going through these brushes, seeing what they look like. And get familiar with some of the different textures and things like that. So I've got some brush strokes on my canvas here. Now let's introduce you to the next tool, which is smudge, which is this little finger icon. And if you tap on this tool again, you can choose from any brush in your library to smudge with. And it just kind of drags the colors around your canvas. So that's what the smudge does. The next tool over here is the eraser. And just like with the brush and the smudge, you can choose any brush to be your eraser. And there's a lot of good things about being able to do that. You can match your kind of erase strokes to your brush strokes so it looks seamless, but that's a really highly useful tool right there. Between the brush and the eraser, those are the ones that I use the most. And then the next thing we've got is our layers. Layers are one of the most powerful aspects of doing digital art. They allow you to separate out parts of your artwork from each other and you can manipulate them independently. So make sure you tap back over to your brush. And the next thing I want to show you are these sliders. This is called the sidebar. And we've got these sliders. The top one is going to be your brush size. You can make your brush big or little. Let me choose a different brush here so we can see it a little bit better. So you can make your brush size big or you can make it small. And then the other brush or the other slider here is our opacity. So I can turn the opacity down and that just makes my strokes a little see-through or a lot see-through depending on how high you have that slider. Next, I want to show you a couple of Procreate gestures. Now, Procreate was built to be a platform that runs on touch. So gestures are a really important part of working in Procreate. So the first ones are undo and redo. These are super useful. This is kind of the benefit of working in Procreate, or digitally for that matter, is that you can actually undo whatever you want. If you mess up, just undo it, try again. And it's very freeing. You're not just like, oh no, I messed up on my paper and now it's ruined. You can just undo. So 2 fingers and tap. Every time you tap, it's just going to undo one step of what you had done previously. Or you can tap and hold and that will undo multiple. And then to redo, you take 3 fingers and you tap and you can redo what you had just done. And the last thing I want to show you in this lesson are some of the menus over on this side. So first of all, we've got our actions menu, and there's a lot of different options here, but you can add things to your canvas. Under the canvas, there's a lot of different options there. You don't get overwhelmed. Don't worry about that for now. There's the sharing options for when you're ready to export your artwork and share it with the world. And then another fun one is the video, and you can actually watch a time-lapse replay of your art. So if we tap that, I can see kind of like a replay of everything that I just did. And there's some preferences and things like that, but don't worry about that for now. The next menu here is the adjustments menu, and these are for making alterations to your artwork. And then over here we have our selection tool, and this is for making selections. And then we have our transform tool, which is for moving and manipulating things around the canvas.
Environments play a major role in setting the mood and tone of a story. By creating captivating scenes and backgrounds, we can communicate so much atmosphere and invite the viewer into our own little worlds. Hi, I'm Sarah Holliday and I'm an illustrator from Scotland. Let's start by looking at how to create a sense of depth and perspective in our scenes, which will allow us to shape more believable and immersive compositions. So we can convey depth using a combination of several methods, such as scale, layering, tonal value, and perspective. So let's look at how we can use these techniques to create depth in our scenes. I'll be using my iPad Pro with Procreate in my demonstrations, but feel free to follow along with your preferred drawing tools. Let's start off with scale. So I'm first of all going to draw a tree and just duplicate this a couple of times, and then I'll also draw a line for our ground plane. So you can see that these are all the same size, and it appears as though they're all in a row on the same level with not much space between them. So let's first of all make one of these trees larger and one a bit smaller. So even though these are now different sizes, we still don't have that clear a sense of depth. So another thing we can do is layer these trees. I'll bring them a bit closer together so that one overlaps the other, and I'll do the same with this smaller tree, bringing it behind the others. And then we can rub out these areas where the tree behind is being overlapped by the one in front. So we can start to see now that there's a hierarchy of placement with the larger tree in front and the smaller tree behind. So we have some perspective starting to form here, but they do still look kind of flat, as if they're pieces of paper placed on top of one another. There's no real sense of space between them yet. So another way to enhance depth is to use tonal value. So that's how light or dark in tone they are. So I'll colour each of these trees in black. And then I'm going to lighten that furthermost tree quite a lot, and then I'll lighten the mid-range tree a little less. So as things move further and further away from us, they become duller and lighter to our eyes, because there are more air particles in between our vision and the subject, which obscures the colours and values. And this phenomenon is known as atmospheric perspective. So you can see now with this combination of scale, layering, and atmospheric perspective, we've managed to achieve a very basic illusion of depth. So now let's move on to look at some basic perspective tools which can help us enhance depth in our environments even more. When it comes to working with landscapes and perspective in general, one of the first things we want to do is identify a horizon line. The horizon line is basically the line that separates the sky from the ground. So generally anything below the line is part of the ground, and above the line is the sky. So once you've drawn your horizon line, we can identify the vanishing point, and this can be placed on any part of that line. So I'll just place it roughly in the middle here. And our vanishing point is the point in our image which everything recedes towards. So you can make little guidelines from your vanishing point coming outwards, which will help you visualize your scale here. So these can just be randomized lines that come out from your vanishing point at any place. You can make them close together or far apart, it doesn't really matter. So if you're using Procreate, there's a really useful tool I'm going to show you now, so you don't have to hand draw all your guidelines. So I'll just get rid of those guidelines for now. Then we can go to Actions, Canvas, Drawing Guide, and turn on this little switch here. And you can see this grid has appeared on the canvas. So we need to tap Edit Drawing Guide. And then you'll see this row of different types of drawing guides come up. So let's select Perspective. Now you can see at the top here it says tap to create a vanishing point. So I'm going to tap on our vanishing point there. And you can see this has come up with loads of little lines that all meet in the middle at that vanishing point. So I'll just align that with our original placement. You can also change the colour of those guidelines if you want, and you can adjust the thickness and opacity as well. So once you're happy, just click Done. And if you want to turn that on and off at any time, if it's distracting you from your drawing, you can just flick that switch there. So we'll keep these on for now, and we can use these lines as guides. So I'll firstly draw in quite a small tree close to my vanishing point. So if we imagine a tree of the same size as this one brought towards us, then we can follow along those same lines and roughly draw that in further from the vanishing point. So you can see how those guidelines are much more spaced apart the further away from the vanishing point they are, meaning that objects will appear much larger the further from the vanishing point they are, compared to objects of the same size which are close to the vanishing point. So if we draw another tree midway between these two, it further emphasizes that distance and depth. And you can also use that atmospheric perspective principle to enhance the depth here. So the fun thing about drawing landscapes and natural scenes is that as long as we have these main concepts in mind, we don't have to particularly worry about whether the perspective is totally correct or not, because we can get away with a lot more compared to drawing architectural or interior scenes. So don't worry too much once you have a kind of rough sense of perspective. As long as you adhere to the basic principles, you'll probably be fine. So you can show different sizes of elements and in pretty random placements. And because we have some basic perspective defined already, we can randomize our sizes and shapes of our subjects without being too precise or mathematical about it. And the same thing happens with elements in the sky. So say we have a cloud that is kind of far away from the vanishing point, it's going to be really large compared to clouds that are nearer the vanishing point. And things become much more bunched up as they reach the vanishing point because the space appears more compact. So by having these elements coming towards us in the sky as well as the ground, it creates a really immersive experience of depth. And if you want to draw a curving river or a path or something, you can just draw out some basic guidelines that you want the path to follow. And then you can just draw this curve within those guidelines. And the curve will become more and more bunched up as it moves towards the vanishing point. So you can see that the gaps between these curves are quite large in the foreground, and they then become smaller and smaller until they're really bunched up towards that vanishing point. So it's helpful if you roughly draw out these guidelines first, and then you can draw over that with a bit more confidence. And also remember, if this is a path or a river, it'll appear really thick in the foreground, and then it'll gradually become thinner and thinner as it nears your vanishing point. So the same thing happens with hills and mountains as they become smaller and more bunched up in the distance. So you get the general idea. So let's just turn these layers off for now, and I'll turn those guides off so that we can see our original horizon line. And I'll just show you some different ways that you can lay out your horizon line on your image now. So we can just draw a simple box around that line to represent the size of our image. So you can see here our image is split in half by that horizon line. And this creates quite a balanced, symmetrical scene, especially if we have the vanishing point halfway along that line. But it can also be quite boring, and it's not a very interesting composition. So I like to either have my horizon line a little bit above or below the midline because I think it creates a bit more interest, but it's still not too extreme. But if you want to create a really extreme perspective, then you can place the horizon line really high up your image, and that'll show loads of your ground area and not very much of the sky. And this gives the impression that the viewer is really high up somewhere and is looking down, and it gives them a sense of control over the scene because they've got a good vantage point. They can probably see a lot of the area and what's going on. So conversely, you can place the horizon line really low in your image, and that'll show loads of the sky. So you might want to show a lot of the cloud action that's going on, or some birds flying, or a really tall mountain looming above. And this gives the impression that the viewer is looking upwards, and it makes them feel small and grounded. You can use this to create a sense of awe or drama, or maybe that there's an obstacle to be overcome. So something else you can do to create an extreme point of view is to angle the horizon line. And this will make everything in your landscape tilt. So everything in your image is going to tilt along with that. And this really plays with our brain and makes us feel a bit anxious and uneasy. So you can use this for the part of the story where maybe something's going wrong or there's some sense of drama, and this will add to a feeling of tension or excitement. But use this sparingly because you'll want it to be really impactful when you do use it, so just be aware of that. So you can see that when we have a straight horizon line, we think, oh, what a nice landscape. But then when we twist it, it changes the feeling completely, and we're thinking, what is going on? So you can also play with the placement of your vanishing point. It doesn't have to be right in the center of your image, just as long as it's somewhere on that horizon line. And it doesn't have to even be in your image. It could be totally off the composition altogether.